And we're live. So from now on, we'll speak English and we'll wait for like 2 more minutes to start. In the meanwhile, I'm going to shut up. Mm. Can you see I'm wearing a shirt 6 times my size just because I didn't have a FinOps shirt? So like found the first one I had. It's a bit long, but I make it work.
It looks good. It looks good.
Thank you. I was fishing for a compliment there.
Ah, um,
Asaf, you're good? You're with us? Okay. Sorry.
we can do in the meantime. There's a questions section at the bottom right, right?
Yeah, and polls also.
So if anyone has a question before we start the event, or you want to start engaging, we're going to start in a couple of minutes. But feel free to just interact, and we're here.
I'm doing a poll. Are you struggling to adopt FinOps company-wide? FinOps framework, I would say. FinOps framework company-wide. Yes. No. Just starting. Let's see if something happens. Okay, cool. So we opened the poll, and now I want to wait for Asaf to jump back to the call so we can start.
I voted yes.
You voted yes? I want to vote as well. Hey, Asaf.
Hey guys, yeah, you should you need to press join stage. I was hearing you, and I didn't understand why I'm giving you suggestion about the poll and everything, but yeah,
Did you vote? You need to vote.
I need to vote.
Yeah. Why not?
Just starting.
Okay, so let's get this thing on the road. Hi, everybody. Happy to have you with us on a very cool webinar about how to drive successful company-wide FinOps culture change. We have with us two very cool people with a very deep knowledge regarding FinOps culture and how to implement it. The first one is Dvir Mizrahi from Wix. Dvir, how many years you're implementing FinOps at Wix?
Since January 2017, so a bit more than 6.5 years.
So that's quite a mileage in a FinOps world that I define it as.
What was your first title when you started, working at this?
Well, that's a good question, because FinOps was only adopted in 2000.
Yeah.
Officially. We called it a cloud analyst. And I think that at the time, even if we're already discussing it, it showed very little understanding on what FinOps is, because it's not just analyzing cloud. And we thought like, yeah, let's see how much things cost. Since then, it was quite a journey.
Actually, I think it's super advanced. I mean, most companies didn't do like drill down into their cloud expenses until very recently. Like, yeah, monitoring, but like doing it in 2017.
Yeah, I think that it was a very unique situation where Wix was before migrating to the cloud. So we ran on our own on-premises data centers, but we want to start migration to the cloud because we needed a bit more capacity and more agile methodologies to be first to market. And I think that at the time they mapped the challenges of running workloads in the cloud, and one of them was governing cloud costs. So 5 years, later, we actually thought how awesome it will be. My manager who recruited me thought how awesome it would be to bring someone who is dedicated to escort that migration to the cloud from the financial aspect. So that's quite a cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think you can write You can write a book with stories about how people wound up doing FinOps. Everybody has a different story. It's pretty amazing how this entire ecosystem evolved. Really cool.
It is, but specifically for me, there is a really awesome story about how I came to Wix. It's not out of the scope, but if you're interested, then we can take it offline.
Well, I'm interested as well. Maybe we'll do a follow-up. Let me share the screen. Just 1 second, and we'll get this show on the road. Okay, somebody can tell me that you're seeing my screen? Yeah? Okay.
Wait. Okay, here we go.
Here we go. So again, we got a Dvir that has a very deep knowledge into a FinOps journey in a highly scalable SaaS company such as Wix. And we got Asaf, our co-founder and CPO, that created from the ground up a FinOps platform in the specific mindset of supporting FinOps personas and DevOps that need to integrate it into the company and actually work it into the everyday life of the company. So first of all, let's start from the top. Let's see what we have here today, just to clarify. It's a 3-part discussion about the FinOps journey and a company-wide adoption. We'll start with why it's that complicated to adopt FinOps company-wide. I mean, shouldn't be that complicated, is it's the cost, actually. Like, why they don't care about how much they spend for companies, a profit organization. And then Dvir will give his intake into the cultural tips of how to integrate it, and Asaf will give some of the technical tips regarding what a solution can provide when you adopt FinOps into your organization. So let's talk first about the challenge. Like, why is that complicated? I'll just give a brief insight into the State of FinOps 2023, where the top 3 challenges of practitioners are connected to empowering engineers to take action, organizational alignment or adoption of FinOps, and leadership buy-in for FinOps. Like, that's the hardest things for FinOps to actually do. Dvir, why do you think that is?
That's a very good question. And I can talk about the history of why, and I can tell you that in the first 2 years of my journey, we really tried empowering engineers to take action. And how we approached it was to make them care about how much things cost. And that was a failure. That was a complete disaster, because eventually, when you talk about someone who develops code that is being provisioned into a workload in the cloud, there is little aspect of how much thing costs, because his specific unit costs really nothing, but the holistic approach of being the organizational cost, that's the impact that engineers should take. And I think that empowering engineers to take action is a challenge, because engineers already have so many engineering KPIs and R&D principles to take care of. Then making them care about cost, specifically to know pricing models, to know how things work, to know how much things cost. That's something that is very out of their tool set, and in my opinion, shouldn't even be there. And we shifted the discussion from why are we talking about cost when we can talk about things that is very close to the engineering heart, efficiency, and how we want to implement the culture, saying how we can run more efficiently in the cloud, not more affordable. And language really mattered at the time. And I think eventually that's what moved the needle. That's what started our cultural change, because everyone wants to be efficient and no one wants to be inefficient. And this is an engineering idea that they can understand. And I kept telling them, you wouldn't write wasteful code. Why would you run on a wasteful environment? And it kind of stuck at Wix. And we really started our journey from changing the terminology of how we approach cost in engineering. Regarding organizational adoption of FinOps and leadership buy-in, it's a real challenge, even at Wix. And I think that the way that people approach it is they really want those quick wins, and it's hard to build trust and maintain it. And I think that it's a part of the journey, the FinOps journey in an organization, is to have small building blocks of trust, so you can use it as a currency for your leadership to have executive buy-in, saying it's not a feeling that we're wasting money. Here is the data-driven overview of how the organization is inefficient.
Very cool. Asaf, when you talk to dozens of customers, probably more, much more if you take all the FinOps personas that you talked in the past 2 years. Do you see a lot of questions regarding this topic about how a solution can help us do it, or they looking for the quick wins, as Dvir mentioned?
So naturally, I mean, this is 2023. Everybody's looking for the quick wins. Everybody wanna, see the graph going down. But it depends on the maturity. It depends on the organization. If you're looking for, cost optimization solutions, you don't need a FinOps mentality. You don't need a strong FinOps. But that's the first step. After you get to the quick wins, you start to understand that this entire space needs, a single language, and this entire, way of thinking is not only engineering based, is not only, finance based. It's something in the middle. There's a reason why every company, I think we have already, I think almost every company we work with has at least one, if not more, person with a FinOps title. You need somebody to bridge the gap and highlight the fact that, like Dvir said, move from thinking about quick wins to building the right tools to generate business. This is the way to empower engineering. It's very hard to make them understand why, I'm just throwing ideas here, but why RI coverage works the way that it works. It shouldn't be on their map, but it should be. When you come to an engineering or an engineer and you show him or her that they're building wasteful apps, that they're, it's like an SLA, that they served, I don't know, 1 million requests per day, and the price per request jumped, by 50%. No engineer will, ignore that. But achieving that requires the ability to talk in two worlds: the business world, the finance world, and the cloud world and the cost world. And that's the main challenge. Our customers is basically, if you can picture a line of FinOps adoption, you can see that it starts with quick wins. Let's show a graph going down, but then you start to enter the more interesting use case. How do I monitor waste? How do I detect waste? First thing in the morning. How do I know that a product that is already running in production can even be running for years is still efficient, still working as expected, still serving the customers in an efficient way? I don't want to be surprised at the end of the month or the end of the quarter. So this is the journey that they need to take. It's very challenging. And regarding leadership buy-in, by the way, most leadership they're very keen and they like the concept. Yeah, let's add more FinOps and save more money. But once you come with the tough decisions, and I'm sure Dvir here relates, that you actually show them that this is not something that you can fix in a week of work. You need to actually do engineering work in order to show the ROI here. That's where it's hard. So you need to be very accurate. You need to be to talk in the language of the organization itself, which is super important, and translate all your findings to what's our ROI, what we need to do to achieve that, get the buy-in for engineering, and then get the leadership buy-in.
Very cool. So I think it ties us really well to our next slide, which is Dvir's cultural tips. Of course, Asaf will also pitch in regarding specific elements, but how do you actually persuade management to take those hard decisions? And how do you, on the other hand, make the engineers actually work with you and not, I won't say against you, but just, I don't know, ignore you or just do what they want because you don't have any authority on that aspect. You need to make them want to join the efforts. So Dvir, take it away.
Perfect. So
I'm sorry, I want to log you for a second, just because I see that there's no text on the right on the QR code. So this part is taken from Dvir's fabulous blog about how to move the needle in an organization regarding FinOps, obviously. So if you see it, you want to get to the blog, I'm going to attach it later to the page, but you can also scan it right here and you'll get to the blog. So it will continue.
No problem. Thank you so much. I think that, first of all, I want to start by a bit disagreeing with what you said. I don't think that the journey should start with an executive buy-in. And again, it's very hard to reach that phase. As you saw, it's a challenge to get executive buy-in. They think it's a sprint and they want results, as you said, immediately. So I think the journey shouldn't start with the leadership at all. I think that there is a lot of attention on cloud spend, and a lot of organizations really try to focus on that. But when we talk about mandate, most organizations won't give the mandate for the FinOps to change priorities, to create that shift in sprints from the engineering side to work on cost optimization effort. And I think that's why most organizations are struggling with implementing a culture. I learned history when I was younger, and there is a sentence I keep using because it says emancipation from the people. And I think that it doesn't matter what the leadership states, they're so far up the food chain that they don't have actual impact on the engineering decisions happening on the lowest level. So I think that the start of this journey should start from the engineering teams, not from leadership. So this is what I disagree with you. Again, it works in engineering companies. I talked with many that are, they have an engineering mindset, and we can adapt that approach to different organizations. Okay, so about that. When you start working with engineers, there are a lot of things to notice. First of all, one of the biggest challenges we had was using a common language. And we kept trying to talk to make them learn a financial language. So understand what TCO means, understand what the return of investment is, how to calculate those, how to be mindful of costs. And then we realized something very important. Knowing how much things cost doesn't generate action items. So I can tell you just a random number, right? For an example, I can have a $50,000 EKS workload that is fully optimized and a $10,000 workload that is not needed at all. So the idea is to know where to focus, and it's not necessarily from the cost side. So once we realized that, we started using focusing more on waste metrics. So we looked at a workload in the cloud, and instead of asking how much things cost, we actually used utilization metrics and monitoring to understand how much things are wasteful. Again, as I said, we changed from waste to expensive to efficient. And so we try to achieve that language or to break that language barrier, showing engineers this is an inefficient workload because this is how much it wastes. It achieved two things. First one, people don't like to know that they're wasting money. Like if you tell an engineer your workload is costing $100, okay. But if you're telling him you're wasting out of the 170, that's a complete different discussion. And it helped us unify the dashboard, showing not just how much thing cost, but across the board where we should put our attention. So this is the first tip that I have. Don't focus necessarily just on costs, but how much those workloads are wasteful. I think the biggest change that we had in the organization was that you said that how to gain mandate to change things. And I think that the best way we approached it was to have a seat at the table. If you're waiting for the cost, then you're reactive to cost. And it doesn't matter if you're on top of things. If there was an incident of $100,000 and you noticed it the day later, it's already too late and it happened. And I think part of being proactive, it's not take your action items from the cost reports at all, but to make sure that you're part of the provisioning pipeline, the part of the engineering pipeline, sit at the table from the design phase and to the implementation phase to escort it side by side, but not just to escort it as an envelope pusher. Be a professional and be one of the approvers of the agenda. Make sure that your vote counts from the financial side as well as from technical side. And the last thing, because we don't have much time and the blog is there, I do want to focus on another thing regarding reservation. And I think that's a lot of companies are trying to make a quick win. As we said, it's a sprint out of reserving a lot of their workload and then start investigating it. I'm not against it, but don't make a practice out of it. If we're committing to a specific baseline, it has multiple implications on how we renew our contract, understand what the commitments are, and the way that it prevents us from optimizing our environment for the term of the reservation. So just be mindful. It can save you in the short term, but it can cost you much more in the long term.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Dvir, for that part. Asaf, anything to add on this element?
No, I think that we already touched on most points. I love the not stop reserving waste. That's a great catch line. I think that this is one of the biggest topics in the past year. Is like, okay, so how can I save the biggest amount of money with the least amount of effort? Again, I'm doing like this effort. I'll buy RIs, I'll commit, I'll buy saving plans, but it's basically reserving, like Dvir said, it's reserving infrastructure. And then once you start doing, changes that are actually meaningful, you're stuck with stuff that you don't need. So this should be really done really carefully. And in a lot of conversations with engineering, it's part of the design process, and building from the bottom up here is the way to go. And the celebrate wins, I have to highlight that the ability to even show in the end of the month and highlight in your system. I don't know what your system you're using to analyze costs, but the ability to aggregate the small wins, the stuff that you are actually making a difference, and showing that to your engineering teams, putting that as part of the dashboards that they're seeing. It's like it's fun. It helps, and it also helps to see that this month we didn't invest a lot of effort in lowering the cost. It's a decision that is valid to take, like any decision in product development, but it's something that should be on the table. So that's
it has to be, right? Because two things happening from celebrating wings. First one is, as I said before, it generates currency to take to leadership and say, listen, I'm going to purchase your buy-in, and I'm going to take those wins, and I show you a data-driven decision to invest more engineering time in order to reduce our footprint. But it also creates education and engagement from the engineering teams. So when we're talking about moving the needle, when we're talking about building a culture, I think it's very important to focus that people are engaged with your activities. They want to be the newsletter you spread to leadership. They want to be a success story in the environment, in the organization. So it really drives the change.
That's super cool. I want to move to the second, the third part of this discussion, which in the second part, like to complement the Dvir, which is let's conclude. But we want to empower the engineers. I want to empower FinOps to actually be the hero and moderate and change, and not only do the day-to-day and avoid affecting the bigger picture. Like, you want to make the impact. And regarding, I want to take it to a different angle from the cultural aspect. Again, super important, and that is the technical aspect of what do you need, which kind of tools do you need in your toolkit in order for you to create a successful FinOps transition inside the company. So, Asaf, take it away. Again, there's a line, but you can take it to whatever you feel is right and correct, in your opinion, or most important.
Okay. First of all, I have to stress that Dvir also gave technical tips.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
the ability to move from cost to talking about waste. This is, a very short sentence that encapsulates many technical abilities there, and I had like 4 questions only by thinking about it. For the 30 seconds that I'd explained this. This is super important, super critical, and I think that it's a great way to do this. From our customer journeys and our customers' challenges, first of all, and we already talked about it a lot. At the end of the day, we're working with people. We're working with, I want to say, agendas. So communication is key. You need to create dashboards that are around the story. For this, we mentioned an example around a dev team, around a dev group. So everybody, it's like anything else with engineering. Once there's a dashboard that everybody agrees on these numbers, that this is the right numbers, this is something that we can start to build, a communication around it, build a culture around it. Regarding budgeting and forecasting, at the end of the day, we need to be able to monitor and be able to create a culture around our numbers. What do I mean by that? So you created these dashboards, you created a allocation per team. That's amazing. But it's a dashboarding mechanism. And everybody knows that a dashboarding mechanism isn't good enough. You need something that will alert you, something that will be around your business goals. And if we're talking about budgeting and forecasting, what's better than being able to allocate your cost to business sections, and then being able to proactively identify that, well, if I'm looking at my usage, I don't know, the past 2 months. So for the data team, where I'm talking about a forecast that is about to break through the allocated budget by the end of the quarter, what's going on there? Is it, and this is something, by the way, that is super important. The fact that we're forecasted to break the budget doesn't mean a bad thing. I mean, if the business is booming and we are increasing customer onboarding, it's okay. But we need to have the conversation. In order to have the conversation, we need to create these mechanisms, and we need to create these dashboards. Anomaly detection and alerting, same thing. I don't think we need to dive into this. And this is super important. If we're working with engineers, and I'm proud to be a former engineer, if you're coming with insights, if you're coming with actionable items, first of all, be accurate. An engineer can see a mistake once, and once you come with another action item or something like that, he starts or she starts from their assumption is that you're wrong. That's engineers. That's how they work. So
I agree. Trust has to be a key, right? It has to be trustworthy.
Exactly. And then it has to be actionable. Yeah, our cost is jumping by 20%. Where is it the jump coming from? Why is it happening? Why is it different from last month? What's the business saying? Is it a good jump? Is it a bad jump? Give context. Engineers care about the story. They want to understand that they're part of a system, that they influence the system. We already talked about highlight wins and bigs and small. This is something that we can't stress enough. It's a journey. company adoption won't start if you have, I don't know, 10 dev teams. It won't start with 9 out of the box. It will start with 1 and then 2, and then we will spread. But this is something that you need to realize. But once the company adopts it, it's amazing. So if you have a win, highlight it, show it, share it with leadership. It's super important for adoption. And I also want to add something that is not on the list. At the beginning of the, you're using a tool. It's amazing, great graphs, great recommendation, everything is great. Eventually, we're going to work with an organization that is not, 40 people in a garage. It's like, I don't know, hundreds or even thousands of people. You need to be able to use a tool, and the tool needs to be able to address your company agenda and needs. If it can't scale with you, what I mean by that, if the entire budgeting process is, not built for, an infrastructure of hundreds of people, if the anomaly detection can't be, smart enough to send these alerts to the right people, then you're falling at the point 4, because if you have to be able to talk to the right people about their own infrastructure, not trying to understand from the mess who's responsible for what. So this is super important. Dvir, anything you want to add?
I have a question for Dvir.
Sure.
So you have I didn't know we're
I just want to
I have
say
a question.
I totally agree
Garage.
with that sense of ownership that people need to take on their workloads. But yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted I was curious regarding the actual practice, not in theory of moving engineers, which is obviously super important, but let's say you find out a specific element that you need the engineers to do. I'm not saying, in idle they need to close, like something a little bit more complex. How do you persuade them? Like what's the actual way to do it? You don't Slack them. You don't open a Monday board, or like there's a process there. How do you keep them like, because they have their own agenda and their own itinerary, and now you're adding another task. So it is complicated. Like you need to, I don't know, persuade them to do it in a way.
It's a great question. And the way that I'd approach it is, as I said, it has to be data driven. You can't go to engineer and say your solution is too expensive. It won't change anything. Like, what is too expensive? No, it's reliable. It's 3 times what it should be because I want to handle 3 times traffic, regardless if I'm getting that or not. I can give you a proper example. It's a true story. I can't share numbers, but just so you get into the idea of how to change a way that engineers think. We used to work on a Dynamo DB. We still do, but we worked in Dynamo tables. It's already published, so I'm gonna talk about the highlights. And that workload really cost money, like impactful amount of money on my budget. And when I talked with the engineering teams, they said, don't worry about it. We are using the more affordable pricing plan for Dynamo. So for those of you who don't know, Dynamo has 2 pricing plans, the on-demand one for burstable workloads and unknown like baseline, and a provisioned one. It's like a reservation without the time, and you can provision the number of read and write IOPS for your workload, prepay them, and then you'll get them by discount. And you use them, you didn't use them, you already paid for them. And they thought it's the more affordable pricing solution, so they're optimized. And the way we approach it was, as I said, using data. And we took there are 4 CloudWatch metrics that are interesting here: the provisioned read IOPS and the provisioned write IOPS, and surprisingly enough, the consumed ones. And we just, removed one and the other, and we showed not how much the agenda cost, as I said. We showed for each table on the level of the table and the global secondary indexes tables, how much waste their provision is generating 2 weeks. It completely changed the discussion, because we no longer said your solution is too expensive. We said your solution is wasteful and not efficient. And we fixed it, and we have dashboards not showing the cost of the agenda, but dashboards that are being read and alerting if the waste is above a certain percentage of what the buffer we allow for spikes in the provisioned pricing plan. So to answer your question, how do I approach changing engineering priorities in the sprint? Like how can I make them work on my tasks and not the product and the business? By understanding two main things. The first one, if there is data that I can gather to show if an activity is efficient or inefficient. And the second one, I think, is the more important and the most important one, is to understand what the business that the hardware is actually serving. So apply that. Asaf talked about it. Like, I don't need to investigate an increase in $30,000 with my application layer if I have a unit economic or a business unit economic telling me the cost per request is the same. I know more requests, more hardware, it fits. So applying unit economics, the business unit, not like percentage of spot usage or percentage of Graviton adoption. I'm talking about real business KPIs and a platform that will enable using custom metrics for my business and to correlate them to the hardware that is running them is the best one. And we gain that visibility to the engineering, telling them, listen, something changed. We can alert not by cost metrics, but something in our KPI has a negative ROI today.
You know, it's very interesting.
And I completely agree, and I even want to reiterate what Dvir said, because it's key. Once you agree on a unit economics, and like Dvir said, it has to be on a business level. It can even cause a conversation that is, we see a 10% spike in your cost, and then you actually give engineering an ability to answer, yeah, because we have a 15% spike in our whatever customers' usage of this product or this business model, and then they're not even under the microscope for being wasteful. They're actually, they can be celebrating a win here. This is the way to generate a conversation that is not on finger pointing. It's on, okay, so we're good. The FinOps team worked with us. This is the KPI that we need to look at. We're doing a great job. Let us continue developing in velocity. So I totally agree. This is the way. Agreeing on language and taking it from there, and agreeing on waste metrics and taking it from there. It's the same thing.
But there's an additional benefit to that, to using unit economics. You can also see customers or users that are causing a financial impact to your cloud workload. So when you have an increase, you can actually pinpoint it to a fraudulent activity. You can pinpoint it to some abuse of the system. And it gives you so much insight, more than this is expensive, but why is it expensive? Yep. So that's the way to go.
Yep. It's just like looking at a load on a database that is increasing, and the first thing you ask yourself is, what's causing that increase in the load? It's the same thing. It's a business metric that the first thing you ask yourself, wait a minute, why am I jumping by 20% on my unit economics price? It's from these features, that customers, that user, whatever. And then it becomes a business decision. Okay, we're good with that customer costing us more money because the contract is 5 times what we expected, and then the priorities need to adhere. But then you create a new baseline, and that's okay. But the conversation is much quicker, much easier to generate. Unit economics are awesome.
The number of times I saw a database increasing in size because someone added an inefficient query for a non-indexed table, for example, is incredible. So you have to dive deep into the what is running, what is the business. I agree.
So I want to wrap it up. I don't want to keep everybody too far in the conversation. Before I end, there's 2 things I want to say. I think what's very interesting about what you talked about is once you do the more advanced FinOps capabilities of unit economics, you can actually create a much more valuable system and surpass the quick wins with a much more deeper wins into the system. So the faster you get the entire company involved with FinOps and creating those unit economics, because this is something usually companies reserve for if we talk FinOps or crawl, walk, run, they reserve it to the run stage. And when you guys talk right now, I'm like, okay, so it needs to be sooner rather than later, because it gives you so much more observability into what's going on. I want to, if there's any questions, anything else someone want to add, let me see, how can I remove the, wait a minute, stop sharing. Any questions? I see we have 8 people with us. Questions? I'll give it 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, see that Michael is writing, how do you optimize code, like source code, which is a bit off our radar. I don't believe
we have Code Guru, we have services that are do that, but again, it's so dependent on the library and the runtime environment and the kind of models that you'll need. So it's a really big question for a very short time. But if you have something more specific, then
you're just giving me more ideas for more webinars, Michael. Asaf would love to go and have a webinar and talk about the code optimization.
Yeah, I think there are multiple tools to scan your code and flag for inefficiencies.
For sure. I want to thank Dvir that joined FinOps for this event. Dvir, are you heading to FinOps X next week?
For personal reason, I can't, but my employee will be there. Next year, I'll join.
Okay, for sure. So it's a shame you won't be there. Asaf will be there. If you're heading to FinOps X, come join us at our party, FinOps After Dark. Swag, drinks, food, it's going to be amazing. Obviously, we have a booth, so grab us, talk to us. We'd love to learn anything we can about your FinOps challenge and what you do. And it's great to have you with us. And again, thank you, Dvir, for joining this call.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
ואנחנו